Boom shakalaka, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters around the world. You are seeing the beautiful, sexy smile of Leila Melki in the house, the entrepreneur, the technology expert, the Zumba dancer, the fitness guru. This girl has got it all going on, and lately she has been getting into the world of Bitcoin. So we're going to take the next hour to delve into what's been going on in the technology world, the finance world, particularly Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the future, and unless, of course, you've been living under a rock for the last 6 months or so, you probably would have noticed the crazy thing that has been going on in the world of Bitcoin. This is the currency of the future, people. It's called internet money. Its price has gone up by almost 1,000% since last year, and it has the ability to revolutionize the way in which we interact, the way in which we trade, the way in which we exist in this world. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. Leila Melki, how you doing, girl? It's been some time.
Michelle, how you doing?
I'm doing good, girl. I'm doing good, girl.
Very good to see you.
Yeah, I think it's been almost 5 years since I've had you in my humble studios over here, and it is good to have you in again. And I'm glad that we get to delve into this world, this phenomenon that has taken control of the reins of finance over the last year.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's been around for a while, but I feel like it's only been maybe this year that people are really starting to take notice, unless, of course, they're in your world, let's say finance or technology like myself. But tell me, how'd you get into the whole Bitcoin thing? What's your experience been like?
Well, it was probably about a few months ago when I was working for a managed service provider with we were talking about how to sell managed services and managed
Sorry, can I just
security.
get you to get a bit closer to
sure,
the...
no
see if you
worries.
can hold
okay.
it into
So-
your... Yeah.
So we were talking about how to qualify opportunities to sell managed security, the whole thing about cyber security, especially with the massive malwares that attacked the world earlier this year. Through my learning journey, just through different events that I went to, I was listening to, in particular, one CIO for the National Australia Bank give an example of the WannaCry malware, and he was talking about how to be able to release the key for the crypto locker that was placed on over 150,000 computers around the world, people were pretty much forced to open up e-wallets to be able to pay for their crypto locker key using Bitcoin. And I'm like, wow, that is phenomenal. And that was just testing grounds for these hackers. So, the fee wasn't very large, just to be able to condition people into using Bitcoin and to unlock their crypto lockers, because they're gonna get more frequent. Let's be honest here. Hackers on cyberspace are going to be much more prominent.
So wait a sec. What are these crypto lockers that you're talking about?
So they're like little viruses that actually take over a part of your computer and extract information, mostly personal information, your banking details, your any sort of ID that they could be able to duplicate and use for themselves. So it's identity theft. So it's a massive concern. Very valuable data. So data is our most valuable resource now. Forget oil and petrol and electricity. It's now data.
Absolutely. I keep hearing that every social media company is taking your data. I mean, particularly if they're not charging you any fee, I mean, that's how they make their money. For instance, Facebook. Most people don't realize that you're paying money to use Facebook. All that information, like your name, your date of birth, that you don't care about giving up, that stuff is taken and sold to companies. That's how they make their money. So if you're not getting any advertising as such, that's what you're selling. Yeah. And it's probably one of the most valuable things that you can give up. Your freedom, as far as your security in like who you are, all that kind of stuff. Once people have that, it gives them access to a whole bunch of things.
Absolutely. I mean, as long as everybody has got one of these, you have pretty much almost zero security of your identity or your financials. You're always at a risk. The only way to be to eliminate that kind of risk is to be completely off the grid.
Damn straight.
Live in the country somewhere. Jungle maybe.
I think that's the reason why people are so apprehensive about something like Bitcoin. I mean, without a doubt, it's unsecure enough as it is. I mean, if you have a credit card, hackers can get access to your information. I mean, the situation is so unsafe that there's no need to make it even more unsafe. By obviously bringing this digital currency into the scene. So What do you say to people in regards to that? I mean, do you think it's a good idea to take that risk? I mean,
yeah, well, you know, it's not even a risk anymore. I mean, well, it is a risk, of course, but it's become a norm, is what I'm trying to say here. That moving forward into the future of the digital world and currency, it is a norm. So people are now they're now able to make purchases online with Bitcoin. This was once upon a time just a concept. The Bitcoin itself was just a tradable unit of measurement to be able to transact an algorithm from one computer to another. It wasn't about money, and you know, over time it gained momentum and built up its value, and it has actually gained a value to it where we can now actually transact.
Yeah, I think to say it's a norm, though, whereas I think it's very normal to, let's say, people like you and I that are a bit more in the tech scene. I think to the typical person that, you know, just works a 9-to-5 job and gets home, listens to some Justin Bieber, or I don't know. It's probably yeah, I shouldn't have picked Justin Bieber. It shows how uncool I am. But it's probably not something that everyone is going to get involved in right now, unless of course they have some understanding of Bitcoin. So I guess one of the things that I'm trying to do is kind of demystify all the weird rumors around it, because I've been obsessed with all the information in regards to Bitcoin lately, and I've learned so much, and that's why I want to do this podcast with you. But I think if we could start off just by talking about what Bitcoin is, because a lot of people hearing us use these words, I'm sure, and they're like, what is Bitcoin? Is it some this is that thing where, you know, all these gangsters and criminals are able to use that to trade illegal drugs and weapons and stuff. Like, what is Bitcoin, Leila?
So it's a protocol. It is actually a protocol. It's a set of rules that is able to determine what one computer can send to another. So that's Bitcoin with a capital B. However, Bitcoin with a little b is actually the currency that is adopted by that protocol.
Yeah, I think that's the one that most people are thinking about. They think Bitcoin, they think money.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think essentially it's about being able to transfer money through the internet, right?
Yes.
And
so it's just a set of digits. It's a set of digits, and these digits are algorithms that are mathematical problems that one computer to another are solving. So the way this actually works is on a peer-to-peer system. It's got nothing to do with a central server or location that is controlling what this computer says and what this computer says. It's directly from one computer to another. So as long as they are all on this system that all communicate to solve these mathematical problems, then they are part of the blockchain.
Sure. I think when people typically think of money, even outside of it in being in this physical form, they think of money as, like, obviously some unit that you're able to transfer value from one person to another, and usually it involves this middleman, usually a bank or third party.
Yes.
So I think what comes to the mind of most people is, well, wait a sec, I'm transferring money from one person to another. Well, who's making sure that money gets received? I mean, and this is the weird thing that I think a lot of people struggle with. They think of someone controlling it. When you think of a normal transfer, you think of a bank or some third party that is ensuring your transfer gets to the destination. And the beauty of Bitcoin is that no one per se is controlling that. It is the internet, and it's a very difficult thing for people to understand. I come from a software engineering background, and I've been learning about the code and learning about the philosophy behind this, and I'm still not fully understanding this thing. It's a very complicated thing, but the main thing to understand, I think, for people is that ultimately there is no middleman. When you're transferring money from one person to another through a bank, typically, obviously the bank needs to ensure that money gets there, and as a result, you often have to pay more money. Often there are restrictions. They have these KYC laws, know your customer, to ensure that the money is not gangster money. You know, you're not getting some gangster pop capping, thug from the project's money laundering. And the thing about internet money is that it doesn't care who you are as such. I mean, essentially, it is a tool that allows you to transfer money from one point to another. And the reason it's so beautiful is that the middleman, so to speak, is not actually a man, or we don't even know who that is. But essentially, on the other end, there are these people called miners. And these are people that you send your internet money in what's called a blockchain. It sends this information, and let's just say it's magic. Through this information, it's able to ensure that your money is received to the person that you're sending it to, and the miner is able to confirm that that money has been received. Like it's this process where they verify that this block that you've sent across is actually legit. And a lot of people say, well, wait a sec, I mean, it's just a system protocol that doesn't have any value. I mean, one of the reservations I've been hearing from a lot of people is that, well, I know when I transfer money from one point to another, well, it's real money. And well, I mean, how do you define what money is? I mean, essentially, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and money is pretty much whatever we give value to. And because people have money in the government system, they have money in the dollar, they assume that if the bank is allowing me to transfer my credit, obviously there's some kind of, that's backed up by something. And what is this internet money backed up by? And I guess the way that I understand that is ultimately, just like with a coin, like a gold coin, you know that has value because it took a certain amount of effort to get that gold coin. Gold is a difficult resource to acquire. It takes time and effort. It has scarcity. Just like with Bitcoin gold, yeah, there are miners that have to invest a tremendous amount of their energy from their computer in order to verify. When you send this money across, they have to invest their own time and energy using their computers to verify this coin, and they actually get paid in Bitcoins. So the same way that you have it, there is scarcity in a dollar coin, or it's actually made up of physical gold material. The same thing applies with a digital Bitcoin, in that it takes a certain amount of energy in order to produce it. It costs something like $1,000 worth of energy to produce a Bitcoin. And you think about all the different properties that make up something to be money, and Bitcoin actually does this more so than the kind of money that we use at the moment. I mean, apparently there are criteria like it has to be durable, and the fact that Bitcoin can't be cracked. I mean, it's digital, don't get me wrong, but essentially it's going to be here. You have your Bitcoin in your wallet, and a few hundred years from now, it's still going to be there. With paper money, not so durable. It may, and of course you have scarcity. It is scarce. There's only going to be 21 million Bitcoins produced. In regards to fungibility, that's supposed to be a characteristic where you can transfer, you can take a dollar note and you can pay to get a banana or food, whatever you want, and it'll be accepted. You'll be able to transpose that money into something else. And with Bitcoin, it's becoming more and more accepted around the world. Yeah. So you have a look at all the different ingredients of what actually makes money, and it's actually more like money than anything else. It's just getting people to adopt this new idea that even though you can't see it as such, it still has the characteristics of money, in that it can be traded around the world. People value it. It is scarce. It is portable, and it is without a doubt the future of banking. Well, the future of money, rather.
Absolutely. It's really educating people to understand what their current money is, and it's a debt. It's a debt that we pay, and it's a physical thing that you touch, a note, a coin of some sort. 3% of the world's money as we know it is actual fiat hard currency. The rest of the institutionalized or centralized money is, so 97% of the rest of the world's money is actually digital, but not crypto. Because the cryptocurrency is decentralized, so it is running off its own peer-to-peer system, and cannot be controlled by central institutions. So it's really allowing people to understand how our current money system works in order for them to understand how the new money system works, and grasping that concept of, wow, you mean to say that I have the power of my money and I can actually make my own money as well, literally. And it's a very hard concept for a lot of people to have. They'd rather be safe and stay attached to an institution, and where their money is sitting in a bank account and giving them like 2.5%.
And it's not your own money if that's happening, is it? No. I mean, that's the thing that really, when I started learning about the monetary system, through my introduction to philosophy, like I've been very much into the philosophy of anarcho-capitalism, libertarianism for a long time, and I only got involved into the financial aspect of it recently.
Yeah.
And then just learning about the monetary system and realizing that when you're storing, first of all, just the way that money is created, it's just, there's through fractional lending. The bank doesn't need to have all the money in there. It only needs to have something like 1%, something for every $100. There's only like $1 in the bank.
That's right.
Or something to that extent. I may have stuffed up a decimal place, but the point is that the bank only needs to have a fraction of the money in the actual bank, and they're able to loan money out to people that they don't have, and then get interest from that. So it's this crazy system, and to make things worse, the government allows in the United States, and I think this applies here as well to some extent, the government's actually able to print money, and this is the thing that stuffs up the entire system. This is why the entire world, in my opinion, actually it's not an opinion, it is built off of actual fact, is so fucked up financially. And I rarely use that word, but back in the time of the Founding Fathers, back in the dawn of the United States, one of the worst things anyone could do was to counterfeit, to make their own money. When an individual did this, it was considered the most treasonous offense. And you hear about people like Jefferson speaking about the punishment for this, and I'm like, whoa, man. But then you realize why it was, because you're not only stealing money from one person, you're stealing from the entire people. But somehow through the democratic system, somehow through the government seizing power that doesn't actually have, and you saying that it's doing it in the interests of people, they've now done this magic trick that's been accepted by the general population, where the Federal Reserve, which is an actual government entity, it's a company but still uses the name federal, is able with the acceptance of the government to print money, to actually make more money. And people don't realize that through inflation, they're stealing your money. Every 30 years, your money loses half of its worth.
Yeah.
I mean, take a pause to appreciate that. Every 30 or so years, your money is worth half of its shit, because these governments, particularly in the United States, they printed all of this money in order to fund their wars and conquests and all that kind of stuff, and use that, because you can't go to war when you have to increase taxes. I mean, you can force people to do that. It doesn't go too well. Like in the United States, the government decided to get the people at a point to bring all of their gold and replace it for these federal notes, and found ways of just taking the money from people. And that wasn't too effective. Obviously, you had a lot of people that were objecting to that. So they just found out it was a lot easier just to print money. If you have control of the money supply, you can do anything you want. So you print this money, which effectively devalues the money of the people, and now you're able to stuff up the worth of many people's money, and it gives you the power to do anything that you want. You can go to wars. I mean, money is power. And the worst thing is that the government is stealing your money through printing of these dollars, even though it's been done through this crony governmental system where we kind of elected these people, apparently the majority of us, and then they've taken upon themselves to do things that neither of us would be happy, none of us, as far as I'm aware, would be keen on them doing. And they use all of these justifications like, this is what we're taught in banks. You need to regulate the money supply. You can't have a system, just based on the gold standard. It's not going to work. And like the current system is working now, I mean, we've lost 97% of the American dollar since its inception. That means you would be, it's just ridiculous when you think about how rich you would be. And when you see what happens when something is actually following a normal monetary system using the gold standard, we're seeing this happen in Bitcoin. You start realizing, oh, this is how money's supposed to work, and that's when your eyes open. Anyway, I went to rant there. But you got to cut me off later, otherwise I'll just keep going.
It's good. It's educational. People need to understand how the money system works and how it's big fraud, and that there's a new wave of education that's out there now to educate people on how the world of the blockchain, the cryptocurrencies, cryptography, all of this is now actually real. This is real. There are developers out there that are working on e-wallets and exchanges that allow you to exchange one crypto to another, or our fiat currency against the Bitcoin. So it's a whole new concept. So there might be some listeners and viewers out there watching and listening to this podcast right now thinking, what are these guys talking about? And there's others that are actually nodding their head like, yeah, that's right. So it's very important that they understand what you're talking about. So there's
absolutely
valuable.
There's so many levels to this, though, because I tend to be very influenced by the whole philosophical side to this. And I'd like to talk about it just a little. I'd like to get more into the financial side of things, because I think most of the reason why most people have taken interest in this is they see what's been happening as far as following the increase of the value of Bitcoin, and it's increased something like, I mean, I'm just having a look at the this thing over here, and look, since last year it's increased by 900%. That means that if you put maybe $1,000 of Bitcoin into you bought $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, you'd have essentially $10,000. So that's ridiculous. I know people that just, and a lot of people talk about the volatility of this thing, like how it's been going up and down. If you look at this on a wider context, it's kind of going all the way up. Now, granted, if you have a look at it within the realm of, like, let's say 1 hour, it's pretty, I mean, usually it'll be pretty fuzzy. It's kind of stabled out over the last few days, but you find that it's very volatile. And this is what the economists, the investment bankers say, oh, you can't trust Bitcoin. One day it's up, and then the next day you've lost all your money. And the thing is, you have a look at the volatility in a lot of other countries that don't have the luxury of having a somewhat stable system. Like, have a look at Venezuela and their dollar, and they have tremendous volatility as well. In fact, if you can compare the Bitcoin dollar to something like 20 of the other currencies in the world, and it's actually less volatile. Now, granted, these countries that have a lot of volatility, yeah, like Bitcoin, it has volatility as well, but the volatility of these countries like Venezuela is it's going down. It's like downward volatility, like going down, down, down. You have a look at the Bitcoin volatility, and it's going up. I mean, there's a point a few years back where it went to 800, then it went all the way down again. And over the last maybe 4, 5, 6 years, it's been relatively volatile, but it has been increasing. And then I went to sleep because I was following this about 5 years ago. Stefan Molyneux, who's a very active libertarian speaker on the internet, he's got like a massive following. He's always talking about Bitcoin, get your Bitcoin. And I kind of went to sleep on it, and then I wake up this year, and it's just shot up. Everyone's telling me about Bitcoin, all my libertarian friends. And look, granted, there is tremendous volatility over here, but it has been consistently going up.
If you have a look over here, this is around the time where those crypto viruses, the WannaCry crypto virus malware came out.
Okay.
That was around here. People bought their, opened up their e-wallets, and the Bitcoin started to go up. This is where they recognized, oh shit, this is actually real.
And that's a serious thing. We got to talk about that, because the biggest, one of the things that I want to do is I want to dispel the fears, not because I'm trying to convince people to invest because they're going to make lots of money, but I'm all about the information here, dropping the wisdomatic truth bombs, and I think it's good to talk about the problems and the pros, of this kind of thing, because it is a risk. Anytime you're investing money, obviously you're taking risk, and with the potential to make so much money, there's also the potential for the criminals out there to take your money away from you. Yes. But in regards to volatility, yes, Bitcoin is volatile. Having said that, if you live in a country like Venezuela, it's actually a more stable medium. And if you were looking at, once you actually understand the economics of things, and you realize that by actually keeping your money in this fiat currency, you're actually losing money over time. I look at Bitcoin not as an opportunity for investment, but more as a way of actually safeguarding my money. And it sounds crazy when you hear about all of the potential problems, let's talk about your experience with this, because I know you're familiar with this whole thing. Like you've recently gotten into the investment of Bitcoin, and what's your experience been like? Have you had any hurdles to overcome in regards to the?
Not so far.
Yeah. So what are you doing as far as taking care of your security with the Bitcoin?
So at the moment, I have been using a platform through a company called Esoteric, and they're software engineers, developers around auto trading. They started off with auto trading, Forex, and they've come across the amazing opportunity with Bitcoin. So it's where excuse me, they're able to you're able to buy a contract for 140%. Well, they pay you out a 1% return on average a day. It's not so much an investment, it's really buying a package or a contract for 140 days roughly, which expires after 140 days, but it gives you a return, so you're profiting about 40% on top. So you take that profit, and you can either buy some more packages and allow the compounding effect to grow your balance and earn more money that way, or you can cash that out and put it back into an e-wallet. So it's, I'm still in my learning phase at the moment, where I'm learning the differences between being able to put your money back into an exchange of some sort, or like Coinbase, which is the world's best at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know if Coinbase could ever have the same issue like Mt. Gox a few
Being
years
hacked.
back.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was holding 70% of the world's Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And that just went bankrupt.
So I got to play devil's advocate over here, because I tend to come from a pretty paranoid background when it comes to the safety of money. In fact, I've never taken any investments as such, because I mean the reason I've gone into this is the whole philosophy behind it, and it's amazing from a technological standpoint. It seems like too good to be true. And when things are too good to be true, you know what they say. So look, in regards to one of the things I've learned from Andreas Antonella, who is the man, by the way, if you want to learn about Bitcoin, you want to learn about every aspect of it, not just the making money side. In fact, that's the last thing he talks about, even though it is obviously a good a good way to make some money potentially. Anyway, no, he talks about the philosophy, the security behind it, and one of the things I've learned is, whereas I thought it was pretty safe, no. But here's the thing: it comes down to different levels of safety. Most people don't realize that most computers are very susceptible to hacking. In fact, chances are, if you've been to a porn site, I don't know about you, but as most guys, including myself, hey, I say it as it is. Yeah, you've probably been to a porn site sometime in your life. So yeah, chances are, if you have, according to McAfee, you probably have some kind of malware on your PC. And the thing about it is, many of these hackers, particularly in Russia, they use these malware programs that search for whether or not you've downloaded these Bitcoin apps, and using these key logging software, they're able to take your strokes, and it can actually hack into your PC. So in regards to just the security, just in general of Bitcoin, like, it is the best thing that you can do is to get yourself some kind of cold storage device, like a Trezor, absolutely, or a Nano Ledger. I mean, that way it can't. I mean, it's near impossible to hack that. It's very, very sophisticated. Even using Wi-Fi, it's very difficult for people to get access to that. And it has a very clever way of, even when you're entering your seeds, which are about 12 words that you use if you were trying to gain access to your Bitcoin wallet, if you've lost everything. Now, the way that this thing is done, it's usually, when you're looking at these key logging programs, the way in which they work, they have a look at where you enter this data. Now, the way that the way the Trezor works, the way in which you input the data changes every time. So these key logging devices won't be able to determine where you've actually typed, or how you've actually typed the information. So it kind of makes it even more difficult. But the main thing to consider is that, whereas from my understanding, look, it's definitely not it's probably on the same level of security as having a credit card, or having an internet banking login account. The only downside is that, unlike a bank, when you lose all of your money, the bank isn't going to pay you out because of fraudulent activity. And granted, that's kind of fucked up in the sense that the bank is essentially giving you money that it doesn't have. So taking money essentially from the people, devaluing the people's dollar in order to address the fraudulent activity that's happened to you. But on levels of security, one of the worst things that you can do, I mean, just outside of hackers and all that kind of stuff, is to have your wallets, this is according to the people like Andreas that take this stuff seriously, is on exchanges. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about these sites like CoinJar, USI Tech, Coinbase, which I use at the moment. But the idea is you're supposed to use this only when you're trying to get access to your money as soon as you can. But the main thing to understand is that when you have when the keys belong to an exchange, like an organization like CoinJar, you don't actually have your Bitcoins. They have your Bitcoins. Mm-hmm. And you're just like you're entrusting a bank to have your money. Yes. And as we've seen with Greece, they don't necessarily give it to you. Even legally, contractually, the bank is not obligated to give you your money in certain circumstances. From my understanding, I mean, if there is some kind of financial collapse, you really have no legal ability to gain access to your money. This is, of course, people don't read the fine print when they're just opening up a bank account. So, main thing for people to understand is that if you really want to take ownership of your own Bitcoins, you want to set up your own wallet, find a Bitcoin wallet, and you know that you have a Bitcoin wallet when you're setting up your seeds. If during the opening of this account, the app that you're using allows you to create what are called seeds, which you can use in the event that your account you lose your phone or something like that, that's when you actually own your Bitcoin keys. Otherwise, I mean, the main thing behind this thing, this entire Bitcoin revolution, is not to have a middleman, not to have a bank. It's all about taking ownership of your own money. So if we're creating another third party and another exchange, whereas that can be very profitable, very effective for various reasons as far as the convenience, ultimately you're giving your trust to them. And ultimately you want to have your trust in your own hands.
Absolutely, and it's very important to touch on the differences also there where there are keys. There's a private key and there's a public key. So the public key that is generated through these wallets is there to make transactions, and it's safely you can use it safely to move from one wallet to another.
Okay.
But the private keys is the one that you you don't ever want to give out those keys to anybody, because that is your coin. That is your key to that coin. You give that away, then somebody's got access to
Absolutely,
that.
and
So
that's what's happening in the exchanges, right?
Absolutely. So people need to learn the differences between the public key and the private key, and to actually store their private key in a cold wallet. So the hot wallets are the publicly open wallets. So like your Coinbase, like your CoinJar, like your Uphold, and all these different ones. So I'm still in research mode at the moment to understand the very best wallets out there that we can use, that are fairly user friendly and just easy to access. Your phone actually can operate as a hard wallet for some of these apps.
The phone's relatively good, I keep hearing. I mean, I've heard it depends on what level you want to take it to. The worst thing you can do is to actually put it on your desktop, to have a Windows desktop. Granted, it's probably on the same level as having an internet banking account and having a password. However, honestly, on a level of like best to worst, phone, Windows, desktop, worst thing you can do. Second best, much, much, much better, is to actually have a smartphone. Now, it's better because all the apps that you download are done through a certified, obviously through the iTunes system. Therefore, it's not going to have malware. Very, very, very unlikely. Having said that, however, apparently iPhones are probably the worst phones, according to McAfee, who takes security to a paranoid level, because these phones can be hacked wirelessly. There are hackers that know what they're doing, can actually gain access to your phone without touching it physically, and can install malware onto it, and still obviously use this keylogging software to gain access to your information. So whereas having an iPhone is probably going to be legit for most of us. It's actually, in fact, Andreas recommends it. He says it's actually really good. But if you're the kind of person that has the kind of money in your wallets where the idea of losing your money makes you go, as opposed to, oh my fucking God, I mean, fair enough. iPhone, fine for that. But if you're in the latter of like the idea of losing all of your money means that you're not going to be able to take your children to school, that kind of stuff. You want to get yourself a hard wallet, because it's markedly much better than having an iPhone. And we're on a level, I think having an iPhone is fine. However, someone like McAfee, who is a paranoid security specialist, would tell you that it's a horrible idea. And he has like the one model phone where it can't actually be hacked wirelessly, and would tell you to get a wallet, a cold storage device like a Trezor or Nano Ledger.
Even a Raspberry Pi. There's another one I've heard about.
Okay.
I've learned more about it, but I understand it's a mini computer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I get them relatively fast, because one of the things we've noticed is that as of the last year, they've been becoming a lot more popular. They're becoming out of stock because more people want to get access to this, and a lot of it's Bitcoin has made a lot of millionaires, and look, it's lost people some money as well. Like, it's not all pros and cons here. There are downsides to it, and the number one regret I hear from people that have made lots of money on Bitcoin is, one, they wish they'd actually bought more Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I mean, apparently if you bought $100 worth of Bitcoin during its inception, you'd be worth $75 million. It sounds ridiculous. I know, but I know people have actually made many, many, many thousands through it. But the second regret is they wish they'd been better with security. People store their private keys on their laptops. You lose that stuff. You lose you lose everything. I mean, unless of course you set up these seeds. And once again, you set up the seed when if you're using an app that asks you to come up with 12 words that you can use to back up your wallet transactions, all that kind of stuff. That's good. Then you have your keys. If you're not, you're using an exchange, and you're pretty much just having another bank. So I mean, that, to be completely honest, it's one of the things that I've been concerned about with CoinJar, US Tech. I mean, I'm at the stage where you've been using it a lot longer than I have,
Yeah.
and I have been trying anytime where, one, I don't have access to, I feel like I have control of my money, I'm like, oh, what's going on here? And it's a situation now because they're having so many people sign up, from what I understand, that it's difficult verifying people. I mean, they have a backlog of thousands upon thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people, so you do need to get yourself verified before you can have access to your wallet. And one of the things I actually wanted to pull you up on is, in regards to US Tech, one, now, I actually only just recently found this out. Like you're saying, within 140 days, you get roughly 140% back. So essentially, you're getting 40% plus of what you put in there. The other thing to consider is that in order to actually get this package, I think it's you're paying about 3% or something.
3% of the actual package cost, not of the Bitcoin value.
Yeah.
So the package cost will always be set against the stable currency, which is, they've chosen the euro. It seems to be a very stable fiat currency.
All right.
So it's 50 euro. 3% mining fee will always be set against the euro value.
Okay.
So it's 51.5 euro for one package.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, when you actually withdraw the funds, so
Yes.
once every day, roughly, you're getting about 1% plus or minus a little bit, roughly every 5 business days.
Yes.
All right. Now, when you actually withdraw the funds, you're also paying a certain fee. I think it's about 2% in order to gain that. So, from my understanding now, this isn't including the compound interest, because there is the potential to make a lot of money from this. But it's about 35% roughly that you're actually getting in addition to what you put in there. And I suppose the thing that I'm apprehensive about is it's when it's 140 days. We're talking about
Working days.
Working days, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's roughly around 6 months for you to get all your money plus the interest that you're going to be getting back. So it is, I mean, don't get me wrong, you have a look at the interest that you're getting from most loans, and the banks are giving you maybe 2%. You'd be lucky at the moment. So the idea of getting 35% interest within 6 months is pretty redonkulous. And then we're not even looking at compound interest. But the reservation I think a lot of people have is that there are a lot of these scams out there. When people, and I'm pretty sure they've been clever not to do this, but anytime people make promises when it comes to investments, it's something to be wary of. Andreas talks about this a lot. Like, anyone that tells you that you're going to make a fortune in Bitcoin, be very wary of them. Like, he doesn't even look at this as an investment opportunity. His whole idea is about, and he says this for legal reasons. I mean, he doesn't want people coming back in and telling him, hey, I lost all my money on Bitcoin, Andreas. But there is always a risk. If you're looking at this as a store of value long term, to me, once you understand the economics of this, it makes perfect sense, because you're actually losing the worth of your money by having your money outside of a system that is using the gold standard. When it comes to things like security, reliability, people obviously have concerns. So in regards to the fact that they don't trust the internet, they don't trust the bodies, the governing bodies around this thing, even though there are none. So there are obviously reservations in regards to investing your money. So I just want to make sure people are aware of these risks and be wary of the fact that there is the potential to earn a lot of money. And to speak frankly, I think I have, in my humble opinion, I'm confident that this is the most powerful piece of technology since the internet. It's Internet 2.0. It will revolutionize the way we do things. The ability for this thing to revolutionize not just the monetary world, but the actual system of government. When you have a look at how people that are within the libertarian movement, very anti the whole idea of the government using the coercive measures of the taxation system, and more importantly, the monies that are taxed, those dollars actually going towards bombing brown people around the world. I mean, Bitcoin allows you to have to actually invest your money in something where you know that it's not going to going against things that you're not in favor of. A lot of Americans are not in line with what their country, what the U.S. government is doing. So philosophically, I'm in line with it. As an investment opportunity, it seems to make long sense. I mean, sense in the long run. Yes. So I like that long sense. But as a quick investment opportunity, yes, the opportunity is there. But with opportunity also comes risk. And it's not something I would invite people to delve into unless they understand not just the risk, but the technology behind it.
They need to understand the technology, because they need to understand the bigger picture, where this is headed, what this is, how it works. You can't compare it. Well, you can sort of compare it to a current opportunity with a bank, like a term deposit. So you put $1,000 into a term deposit for 6 or 7 months, and you'll get a whopping 5%. or something like that.
Yeah,
Some
5% will pay.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And that's provided you have a contract with the bank that locks away your money for X amount of time.
Yeah.
So similarly to that, you are buying packages which are contracts with USI Tech, for example, because the USI Tech's not the only one that does this. There's a few of them out there.
Yeah, heard of BitConnect as well.
Yeah, BitConnect is another one. And there'll be more. This is the beginning. There will be more that actually come out. This is like...
Still the early stages, absolutely.
Yeah, it is. We are in the very early stages of something revolutionary. So just similarly to a term deposit, you're able to have this little contract but unlike a term deposit, your 1% a day, you're able to cash that out. Or
can I just get you to just speak a bit close to the microphone? I just want to make sure that people feel as if you're singing sweet lullabies into their ear, you know?
Sure.
Have that sexy voice about you.
Thank you very much. So unlike
it's like a term deposit, yeah.
Yeah, like a term deposit where it's locked away for 6 months, you can't touch your money. So when you buy a package with a company like USI Tech, for example, you've bought that package, you can't cash that whole pack. You can't withdraw that package. You've got to let it run its term. But the return that it gives you, unlike a centralized bank term deposit, with this system, you're able to either rebuy more packages with the return on capital. I'm sort of cautious of using the word investment. So the return on the capital that you invest, you get that 1% a day, and you can repurchase or rebuy more packages, or you can withdraw it, and obviously you'll take a 2% hit. They got to make money somewhere. Come on,
absolutely.
Let's be real here. Everyone's got to cash in somewhere. If it's for free, if somebody says to you, "Oh, absolutely zero fees and zero this, zero that," that's the one you want to be aware of. When they're telling you lots of money. When there is a financial structure or financial incentive in place, it's definitely something that's worth considering. So, look, I've been doing it for 2.5 months now. I didn't share with anybody in the first 7 weeks what I was doing with USI Tech, because I needed to understand it myself. Well, like most people, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it sounds too good to be true.
Yeah.
What, you can make your own money?
Absolutely.
Pretty much. So I just put my money in, bought my packages, and just let it work. And daily, I was watching it grow. I was like, this thing is good. Okay, so it's got these amazing protocols that populate all these different formulas in the back end automatically. I don't have to sit there and watch like a day trader. It's already doing the work for me.
And it's obviously, it's from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially this auto trading software is making investments into all these different areas. And obviously...
cryptocurrencies.
Absolutely, cryptocurrencies, specifically cryptocurrencies, and selling it for a profit each time using the smart trading system. And you're getting roughly about 1% average. So sometimes it might be more, might be less.
On a good
and
day,
it's like 99% accurate. So
it is pretty accurate. So on a good day, you'll get something like 1.2 max. And on a not so good day, the very worst would be 0.75. And I can see that in my daily payouts. There's a lot of transparency behind
that's for sure. I've definitely been seeing that as far as the money that's been going onto my account. In fact, I did the maths, and if I, let's say, put 25,000 worth of packages, I don't know how much they'd be worth now, how much I'd be able to get buy within Bitcoin.
Daily.
Yeah, but essentially, I would at that point in time be able to get enough to not have to work based off of the and it sounds, and I was thinking to myself, wait, this is too good to be true. And then I started realizing just some of the one in regards to transaction fees as far as withdrawing, the fact that it's actually around 6 months, and it made it, I guess, a bit more understandable in regards to, okay, this seems more viable, and that, you're taking a 6-month risk here, and the fact that we're still in uncharted waters. I mean, for all we know, whereas I believe in the whole idea of cryptocurrency, we don't know definitively if this is going to be around in 1 year's time. You know what I mean?
It could be stronger. It could be
absolutely. So there's obviously the risk there. But the thing that kind of like perked my attention was just the fact that one, there obviously there's a lot of difficulty verifying all the accounts at the moment, and I feel like if I don't have access to my own wallet to be able to withdraw, that's something of concern to me. So that's something that I want to sort out. And in regards to exchanges, I mean, no matter what's going on, I know the way that I understand how to use everything now, that if worse comes to worse, if let's say there is a massive crash on Bitcoin, and it's been relatively stable over the last 12 months. I mean, there hasn't been volatile but not that volatile. I know that worst comes to worst, you can use something like CoinJar and you can transfer the money into Australian dollars just like that. A lot of people don't realize how easy it is to get from Bitcoin into money in your bank account. It's a seamless process. So granted, you're watching the finances, even though it's unlikely to happen. This thing's been running for over 8 years. It's unlikely there's going to be some massive crashing and lose all your money. If worse comes to worse, and let's say everything falls down to where it's 10,274 Australian dollars at the moment, and it'll fluctuate sometimes 20% in one day. It's getting a lot better now. However, if it all did crash, I'd be able to transfer my money into my account, Yep. But if I'm using exchange where I don't have the ability to transfer it, that is obviously a point of concern there. So to me, the more control you have, the better. That's why when it comes to exchanges, they're great if you're willing to give up your trust. But the whole thing about Bitcoin is that it's supposed to be trustless. This is what Andreas keeps on saying, in that you're not giving anyone authority. When you actually understand at the core code level how this thing works and how all of the parties involved, they cannot get anything done without a super majority consensus. Like, it's actually a consensus software that allows decisions to be made unilaterally. That means everyone needs to be on board, and it's constantly evolving. And because of the open source approach to things, no one owns it. This thing would not be able to work if this was established as a company. This is why so many people don't understand how this thing works. They think of things along the lines of always there must be some person that has control, and maybe it's democratic, maybe listens to all the opinions of all the other developers, miners, and then makes a final decision. No. No one has the ability to make a decision. This is actually what we call anarchy in play, a libertarian system where everyone is still working together, but no one has the ability to apply their own force, apply their own authority. And because of that, changes can be made, but they cannot be made without consensus. And when it comes to the core code level, there are all these different levels of influence. You can't make any change unless, of course, the core people are involved. And it's very decentralized. If it was not like this, you get the alphabet crew, so the FBI, CIA, they would get on board and they would dismantle this thing ASAP. This is actually what has happened to companies like eGold that try to do this thing, because it's actually illegal to create your own currency. This is the crazy, and to me, it's a ridiculous idea if you look at this within the realms of libertarian thinking, because anything can technically be money. If you suddenly decide that these strawberries are going to be money, one strawberry is worth, let's say, $1, and people get on board with this and start using strawberries as a form of exchange, and it catches on, technically that's illegal. And when ultimately it's just one person, one individual saying, hey, I own this thing, this is mine, and I'm going to give you the strawberry, and if you're willing to give me something else for it, let's do that. But the government wants to say, no, we're not going to allow that stuff to go on, because we got to regulate this shit. We have to have control of the money supply so we can use this money to bombard people,
Well,
people across the other side of the world.
Absolutely, and look, they're finding ways to take some level of control with this. So, when you can't beat something, you've got to join it. So what I've found out recently as well is that the governing financial bodies, when you're transferring money from one country to another, for example, in between that transaction where they're trying to stabilize that transaction and cash out on it, they're actually using a cryptocurrency in the middle to be able to make sure that there's some money made in the exchange for themselves between point A to point B, and that's using Ripple.
Yeah.
So Ripple is another. It's a very low value cryptocurrency at the moment, and it's a very steady growth. But because of its steadiness, they're able to actually use that cryptocurrency during the exchange.
No doubt.
So I think you should buy into Ripple.
Yeah, Ripple's there.
It's not going anywhere.
That's the other thing. There's so many of these other cryptocurrencies out there. I mean, Ethereum is another one that's been, I think it's number 2 at the moment, and they're all running off of this what we call blockchain technology, right? Like the way, from my understanding of it, Bitcoin. And I don't even know if we're talking about Bitcoin with a capital B or a small b over here, but essentially what most people identify as Bitcoin, it's run using certain technologies, one of which is blockchain technology, another which is cryptography, and it has its own system of protocols. And it's like the mother. All of the other cryptocurrencies that you're seeing have based what they're doing off of this technology. Because the way that this thing came about, it's kind of like a science fiction movie. This anonymous figure called Satoshi Nakamoto, something along those lines. Yeah,
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Nakamoto, that's the one. And we don't know if this is some pseudonym. A lot of the
I think he's from Melbourne.
Yes, there is. Yes, there's a guy that's come out saying that he is the actual Satoshi, and there are some people in the community that are very skeptical in regards to it. But we do know that he came up with the white paper that addressed this incredibly difficult computer science problem. It's called the double spend problem, being able to transfer one piece of information from one to another and not have a copy of it. So to have this ledger where you can keep track of who is paid and who has what. And bottom line, very complicated. This guy was able to solve it, and he presented this as a way of addressing the current monetary situation, because this was around 2008 when we'd had this financial collapse. And he was also a coder, started working with a group of developers on this technology, which is essentially internet money, and had all of these brilliant ideas. I mean, for the people that actually understand the cryptography, the coding behind it, and I take their word, because whereas I understand this stuff on a basic level, I can read code, but I have no understanding of cryptography, no understanding of how these complicated like systems are actually put into place in the protocols and all that kind of stuff. But it is absolute genius how I was able to develop this stuff, and it's become the mother of all of the other cryptocurrencies. So whereas there's slight variations and they're doing different things with the blockchain technology, and this is a word that you'll continually hear. Whereas the banks, they want to avoid using Bitcoin because they don't. The whole idea of having a currency that is a threat to their very way of life is something the banks are not going to get on board. So regardless of what they may be telling you, thinking that they just don't trust this because it's a bad idea. Most banks, at least the big ones, the idea is so offensive to them. I mean, the people that are higher up, the idea of having a system of internet money where they can't be benefiting from the ridiculous interest rates that they have is not. It is a threat to these banking systems. I mean, essentially, it is the same situation that telecommunication companies were in when the internet came. They were very much against the idea of having the internet because it's a threat to their business. So whereas, look, I work part-time in a bank, but I've never thought of myself on team bank, team government. My whole idea is I'm about team freedom, team people. So for something like this that allows people to have the ability to trade their own money without suffering these ridiculous interest rates and not having their money stolen from. Like, once again, I think I said this earlier, every 30 years people lose half of their money. Your money's worth half the amount because governments are printing out money, and inflation is one of the most beautiful magic tricks. It's a way of stealing from people without them even being aware of it. So the fact that this system allows people to trade their money without a third party, without a governing body, it really is the most powerful system in the world as far as how, because everything that is done in this world happens because of money. And one of the reasons that the libertarians, like, they always talk about, oh, taxation is theft, and people think they're crazy, is because at the heart of what they're saying, they believe that the reason the United States, the empire of the United States, is able to launch so many wars in these countries is because of the tax system, because they're able to print their own money. Back in the times of the early United States, it was very difficult to go to war because you'd actually have to drum up tax, and when you increase the interest rates, when you tax people that heavily, they tend to leave. They tend to go to other places. But when you just print money and people aren't aware of it, that's how you're able to spend billions, trillions of dollars every year doing all the things that you'd want to do. Because people think they're all in favor of this stuff. Like, yeah, let's use this money. I'm happy to give up my money. But when people actually have to they're aware of the fact that they're having their money stolen from them through the printing of money and all that kind of stuff, and they really understand how it works, people become less likely to get on board with the whole thing. So that's why, at least myself, I'm so fascinated by this thing, because it's a way of shifting the power. Whereas it's very kind of clandestine at this point in time, eventually it will. This thing was very hidden for me. Like around 2012, I'd hear about it and I thought, whoa, this is really cool technology. Same way as I look at some of the other technologies like 3D printing. Before we know it, we're going to reach a point where we're actually producing physical materials like actual devices, computers with this technology. Of course, we're far away from it now, but we're at the point where we can do some amazing stuff. But because of the exponential growth of technology, it creeps up on you just like that. Last year, this thing was worth $1,000, and people thought, yeah, that's amazing. But once again, I didn't realize I could get $1,000. Like, one of the things I want to speak to you about is how Bitcoin actually works as far as how to purchase it. Because I think a lot of people don't realize it's not that hard to actually get Bitcoin money. No. I thought I'd have to spend $1,000 of my own dollars. No. You can get fractions of this money.
Yes.
And the idea of this thing growing up by 10,000 going up to 10,000 almost in a year, And there is no reason why. I mean, people have called people like McAfee ridiculous, and people like Bill Gates and Richard Branson, kind of these. But they're the ones that don't have anything. They don't care about making or losing money because they already have their money. They're not like these banks. The idea of Bitcoin being worth another 100,000 next year,
Yes.
I'm going to make my bet that, whereas I'm not inciting anyone to get Bitcoins, unless of course you understand the technology, I would make a bet that it's probably going to exponentially grow again and be around 100,000. I'm going to say 120,000 by next year. And I also make the prediction and say that at that point, things will very much change, because whereas in China, it has been banned by the Chinese government because they don't care about freedoms. They care about making sure that they're able to have complete control over their people.
Yeah.
But whereas in some of the Western countries like Australia, when we try to give at least some vague idea that we respect individual freedoms, they've been pretty understanding, and they're kind of like, because of Andres' influence and some of the talks that he's done directly to these governing bodies, it's been given room to grow. But I think once the government realizes just how effective this is, particularly in the United States and more of these authoritative nations, we're going to start seeing a lot of push from organizations to put more restrictions on this. And at the end of the day, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens to this.
Yeah, they're going to find a way. They will always try to find a way. And they're not going to be able to find a way to place restrictions on the blockchain, which is the technology that these cryptocurrencies are generated off.
True.
So, to understand the blockchain a little bit more, if you take a look at what the internet is, there's no way anybody can stop the internet. Like it's an artificial intelligence of its own, and you just, where would you start? There's nodes all over the world that are set up to be able to create transmissions from one point to another. And apparently there's 87 countries around the world with 7,000 or plus so nodes for Bitcoins to be able to be generated off the blockchain. So it's impossible, and they're only going to set up more nodes. So the blockchain is a technology that allows transparency of a transmission from one point to another, and you've got the complete map of its transmission. So the internet really is the platform that allows you to move information from one point to another, but you don't really have complete transparency of the transmission. Blockchain offers that. So it's not just cryptocurrency that's going to be generated off the blockchain. There'll be other business models that will use this technology to be able to create transparency with their transmissions.
No doubt.
Yeah.
One of the things I kind of just want to chime in on, though, is that one of the things that we saw happening with the internet is that we'd see organizations, the government, try to replicate this, like with the intranet.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the very characteristics that make the internet, the fact that no one owns it, you can transmit information from one point to another, it's completely open. When the government tries to do this with a system like the internet, where everything is closed, it's related to this business, you're losing what makes it the internet. And for instance, people I don't think really want to use it like that. Now, I've heard Andreas speak very much. Granted, I don't fully understand this. I'm still trying to come to terms with just the underlying technology, but he makes a distinction between how a lot of these banks refer to blockchain and what it actually is. Yeah. And from what I understand, the way in which the banks or many of these organizations want to use blockchain, it really is, according to him, going to be a waste of time, because they don't actually understand the purpose of this. Like trying to make something a lot of times you don't need more security. Like he was talking about how a lot of these banks want to use the blockchain technology because obviously you can't edit, you can't make any changes and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very secure, but you don't really need to have security in a lot of the things that they do in a governmental organization or within a bank. But they're kind of wanting to implement this technology because they want to latch onto the blockchain, but they don't want to adopt this whole Bitcoin thing because it's kind of like Bitcoin is bad, deals with drugs, drug dealers, and terrorists.
But they are using it themselves.
The blockchain in of itself, that's good. We like that, but we don't like the Bitcoin because that deals with money. But from what Andreas has been saying, they're kind of linked together, at least in the way that makes this thing as effective as it is. I mean, the beauty of Bitcoin, blockchain, I often get confused, but the characteristics that make this thing so beautiful is that it is censorship resistant. No one owns this thing. That means it's not subject to. I mean, the reason as to why you have this full breaking down of security of the so much fuckery at foot is because you have these governing bodies, because as soon as one person gets too much power, this is when regardless of whether it's an individual as a bank or a bank, what happens is when these organizations, they get too much power, they start doing things that are not necessarily in the interest of the people at large. And this is exactly the same thing that we're seeing now happen with the whole idea of Bitcoin, is exactly what the founding fathers tried to do when they were setting up their constitution. And I'm very much into the philosophy behind this. One of the reasons Benjamin Franklin specifically was very apprehensive about the idea of democracy, because the idea within that is that you can still have 51% of the majority having rule over the few, and ultimately any situation where people are able to assert their authority on others creates problems, and you're trying to have as much of a decentralized system as you can. This is why they came up with ideas like constitutional republics, which are a bit better. And the system that we're seeing enacted now, it is a system where it's completely decentralized, completely open. No person, out of the 5 constituents that make up influencing the direction of Bitcoin as to how it's developed, as to how it changes, no one is able to make decisions unless, of course, it's unilaterally accepted by the other parties. And it's very complicated as to how the software works, but the way in which the users make decisions, how the miners decide, I don't understand the details behind it, how they interact with the protocols, but everyone that is influencing this thing, the decisions that they make have an effect on how the direction it's going in, but they can't make decisions unless, of course, everyone else gets in line. So if the miners decide to want to do something and the developers aren't on board with it, there's this balancing of power. And fortunately, we have the miners in China and the Asian countries, a huge amount of them. The developers are in the United States, so there's this balance thing going on. Between the merchants and the exchanges, you still cannot make changes. And as soon as you have a system where one authority, one governing body is able to have control, this thing doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it leads to many problems. And it's really hard for people to get an understanding of how the software works, but it only works because it's what you call a trustless system, in that otherwise it would not be able to, because as soon as you have one body dictating how things are going to go, then you can. The reason I trust this more, and this is the number one concern that people have, because whereas they don't understand it, and for someone like me, I'm a software engineer, by profession. That's what I actually studied. It is very difficult to understand this because there's so many different levels of it. Therefore, the idea of it trying to expect the general public to fully understand, like the idea of having a system that no one controls. They're like, that's nonsense. I don't trust the people that control this. The number one thing my dad says is, look, I don't trust the people behind this. It's been created by the government. It's been created by people that are anti-government. That it's the most decentralized thing you can think of. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But because we don't naturally think of something not having any control, because it's such an advanced system, people immediately go, oh, there must be controllers. I trust the government, I trust the banks over the people controlling it. People that have made this stuff up, this is what's going on the internet. They're a bunch of dodgy people. One of them was caught up in trading weapons. Another one is like a rebel. These people are shady. I don't trust this stuff. When no one actually controls it.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, they associate, especially because we're at the early stages of this, and there's a great documentary on Netflix, which there's also a free version of it online on YouTube, called Banking on Bitcoin, and it talks about the history of where Bitcoin started and how Charlie Schramm and the founder of Silk Road, Ralph, how they got arrested for this whole big new system of exchange.
They were arrested, the makers of... So we're not talking Satoshi, we're talking about one of the initial developers?
Yeah,
or?
we're talking about the guy who is the founder of BitInstant, which was the exchange for Bitcoin, to be able to purchase goods off Silk Road using Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. So they went into partnership, and then they got done by one customer. Once you watch Banking on Bitcoin, you'll understand the whole story. It's phenomenal. But these guys are now in jail for life.
Oh, smack.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, they've done nothing wrong. Well, I mean, hey, okay, one guy's supplying a platform.
Well, it's tricky. I mean, this is the thing. The world has this idea that if something is considered illegal, it's wrong, it's bad. Like the idea of it's like with what was going on with music with Napster, back in the day. Like if you build a platform and people happen to use that to transfer illegal music, I mean, the idea that you're responsible for that, it kind of gets a little tricky. It's like me sharing a tweet, and I know people have been done for this, sharing a tweet about something like, oh man, I watched this movie, this person is such a bad actor, right? And then everyone, because you have so many fans, everyone starts attacking that actor or actress that you criticize and saying all this horrible stuff, and now you get you get made responsible for simply putting a tweet, which in of itself was not a bad thing, but because it's had the effect of getting all of your fans, it's to this
herd mentality.
Absolutely. But the idea of getting blamed for it, this is the problem, I think, with the way in which I think a lot of people view criminal behavior, whereas the idea of simply providing a platform. I mean, Bitcoin can be used to do drug deals and used to do nefarious things.
So
I may create absolutely. I could create a piece of software. It could be used to create other things. I mean, you could say the person that built the internet, because it allows you to access information to build bombs. That person should be held responsible for all the horrible things that go on. But you see, the thing about the people that believe in the whole idea of Bitcoin, they base this off of the philosophy that took place during the Enlightenment era, which is all about individual freedoms. It's what initially formed the Constitution of the United States. It's based off of common law. This idea that there's a science to it, but it's the kind of system that we live in at the moment, whereas because we're trying to think about how to make the society the best place, we're trying to have this authority where the government tries to keep people from doing things which violates their own freedom in order to bring about security. And the Founding Fathers spoke about this, and I'm seeing this similarity between what happened during the formation of the United States, between the politics that is actually going on within Bitcoin. When you you can watch videos about people arguing about the politics behind it, and there's this thing that there was recently a fork between Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin, and when you realize the politics that were on play here, it really does come down to a lot of the same issues. The whole idea of decentralization. They're trying to see the big picture, and one side is trying to prevent a situation where, let's say, the people in China, they have the ability to have influence over what takes place. It's very complicated, but ultimately what the founders of this thing, of Bitcoin, are trying to do, so people like Andreas, people like Roger Ver, who's a very controversial figure, is they're trying to make this thing as censorship resistant as they can, trying to make it as decentralized as they can. And as soon as you have figures that have too much power, too much influence, it puts the thing under risk. And it's very difficult to do this in a system of anarchy which respects complete freedoms. This is why we have a government system. But it's something that is essential if you're going to have a system where people can actually live a life without the tyranny of the government, Otherwise, you end up having scenarios like what we're seeing in India or Greece, where people have been made to give up their. It's from my understanding, what happened in Greece is that the banks were not allowing the citizens to actually get their money. Actually paying the government was actually paying the banks first. So here are people that have built up their entire life savings, trusted in bank accounts, and realistically, even legally, the banks are like, look, we're not going to pay you out. We're gonna pay off these banks first, and it's ridiculous. And the idea of it being illegal, and it is illegal in certain countries during this time to actually save your money, to actually put your money into your own storage, or for instance, you weren't allowed to keep your gold during the United States at a point when they're trying to exchange people's gold for actual money, because it was considered treasonous. Now, the idea that a government can do things like this when people are simply trying to protect their own life savings, this is what I take issue with. This is why people like Andreas are trying to give people an opportunity. He's seen what's happened to his own mother, his own family, sees what happens in so many other countries around the world, like Venezuela, where people have this volatile currency and they're not even able to keep their money. And with a system like Bitcoin, you are able to save your life when you have the ability to transfer your money into this well, because it is unbelievably portable. It is unbelievably secure, providing you're not giving your money to any of these exchanges. And it's a new way of doing things. And obviously with time, I mean, initially, like with most technologies, people are reluctant adopting it. It takes a lot of understanding. Yeah. But over time, I think this is going to be, without a doubt, I'm convinced that it will be the new money. I mean, this is just how technology progresses, Yeah,
well, I mean, take a look at Dubai, for example.
Mm-hmm.
A country that is amazing to live in and work in, tax-free. They are the first country in the world now to adopt to change their whole system to be based around blockchain and cryptocurrency.
Well, there you go.
So
more liberty.
The rest of the world is going to follow.
I think so. Have a look at Japan. I came across this video was talking about how Japan has more than 50% of its transactions or trading taking place through Bitcoin. They've fully embraced this, and it's hilarious because the name of the founder of a Bitcoin has a Japanese name, even though most of the people in the community realize that would have been a pseudonym for a figure or a group of people.
Yeah.
I mean, we have certain evidence to show the interactions that were taking place in email. This guy was very well spoke. Well, it sounded as if he really knew what he was talking about. Very, very intelligent. And people just arrived at the idea it probably wasn't Japanese.
Yeah.
And the Japanese, because of the fact that he has a Japanese name, they love this idea, and they've embraced this thing like no tomorrow. Yeah. So it's one of the countries, and it's so interesting because granted it is an Asian, and I think of a lot of people think of Japan and China as being maybe culturally similar, but they could not be culturally different. Yeah. Because whereas China has completely made it illegal, I mean, it's a serious thing there. They will lock you up in jail for the rest of your life in certain scenarios. In Japan, it has been widely accepted, and if that's an indicate, Japan has a reputation of taking interest in technologies. One of the first. I think Australia's pretty good in that regard as well. But obviously, we do have a strong governing body. Not that Japan does, but I feel like the Australian government wants to ensure that people aren't harmed by this, and we don't see a lot of criminal activity. That's a main concern.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, if you look around here.
Okay.
See, there was a bit of a drop there, where it dropped dramatically. That was when China shut down its Bitcoin exchanges.
Yeah.
But then you see a real sudden rise. That's when Japan and South Korea opened up their exchanges.
Well, there you go.
They saw an opportunity.
And one of the things we're going to see is as more and more countries go through these global collapses, more and more people start investing their money into Bitcoin because it is very secure.
Yeah.
I mean, provided you have your keys and there is the idea of transporting gold, like gold bullion, from another country. Good luck doing that. But the idea now that you can transfer this digital information, you can just put it on your phone, and you can go to another country and you can access it, and you can build up your entire wealth once again. To me, it's revolutionary, and the ability, and without a doubt, like the ability of people now to I mean, I always try to stay away from the investment perspective of this, but I actually watch just the fluctuation. If I purely just wanted to make money, that was my only interest, and I wanted, like a lot of investment traders do, and just watch this thing 24/7. The fact that there is so much volatility creates a lot of risk, but I've seen days where I've shot up, almost $1,000 in the space of a day by just having my money sitting in an account. I can go, I can just take that. But I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe in a few years, that Bitcoin could be worth even more money. Mm-hmm. And there are kids that just 5 years ago bought $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, and they're living there. And just recently, this kid and this 17-year-old kid started using BitConnect, which is another order trading. Yes. I'm not recommending these sites. They have their pros and cons. Yeah. Personally, I don't like the idea of exchanges just for my own security. Yeah. However, this kid was able to make, I think he invested something like 10 grand and was able to make $250,000 from March and is now bowling. So whereas I'm not saying this as a way of trying to incite people to get Bitcoin. No, I think you should be investing yourself into understanding the technology, but realize that once you actually understand how money works, how money is supposed to work actually off a gold standard, you realize that by having your money in actual bank accounts, now granted they may be more secure and the banks may give you your money if there's some kind of fraudulent activity by stealing from the wealth of the people, what you got to realize is that there is no more secure way from a monetary perspective in actually storing value, because every single day, because of the way in which we print money, I don't know about the economics of every country, but with fiat currencies, generally speaking, your dollars are being devalued. And the reason as to why, even though there's volatility in Bitcoin, but the reason as to why it has been steadily growing, evident within the chart, is because it's not subject to the regulations that most governments have with their money, like printing ridiculous amounts of money. And I mean, the idea that my money is every 30 years, roughly speaking, this is Andreas I'm quoting over here, loses half of its value, and you start thinking about it, that means if you spent your entire life, you saved up $1 million, you have 500,000, and most people can't even get past saving wise. I mean, the majority of people can't save much money at all. So you understand why it's so difficult to actually save money, and why the rich continue to get richer and richer from interest. And one of the things I've realized is that all you need is about $500,000 put in a Swiss bank account, and you can live off like 4 or 5% of the interest. Now imagine what would be possible if you didn't have any of these crazy regulations. You could basically loan your money to a third party and charge them. And don't get me wrong, I know a lot of people have reservations about interest. Like I know a lot of the Muslim community, they see that as usury. But the idea, granted that you're taking a risk, just like we're taking a risk investing our money, obviously it's only fair that we, the early investors, they suffer the most benefits. And if people are willing to risk monies using these auto trading programs like BitConnect and USI Tech, and they have the potential to earn 35% interest, and they become millionaires because of it, by taking that risk, at least from a libertarian standpoint, this is just my moral philosophy, it is absolutely right for you to suffer that. It's like someone that invests in their business, knowing that they may very well fail, but knowing that there's the potential for them to succeed. Yeah. It's a risk you're taking, and absolutely. Rightfully so. You should be able to be rewarded that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I had to go to London in person to see how real this thing was for myself. It was at the end of October, and so that would have marked 2 months of when I had first started using the platform. So when I met the founders personally, because I mean, scams, let's be real here. The companies that are scams, they have no transparency of who the founders are, where they're based, no
That's
phone
a good
number.
point.
Just have a platform to take your money and run with it. These guys are very, very transparent. They're out in public. They speak to people. There's names. There's phone numbers for their contact centers. There's support. I had to see for myself how real this was, and it wasn't until I went to London and I saw that it was real. I mean,
so you invested money in flying to London just to see if this thing was real?
Because I had to re-put my money onto this platform, some of it, just to see. So it was working, and I thought, wow, this is great. But I've got people in my ears saying, no.
Exactly. I've had the same thing, people, because people have had experiences, with some of these auto trading sites, and the number one reservation I said was, look, man, there's a dozen of these companies out there. I'm telling you, man, don't put your money into this stuff. And people always say that, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. But
when I went there, I mean, it wasn't just to see that these people existed. I also wanted to hear what the future of this company looks like. Why would I want to put my money into USI Tech? So once I understood the technology, more of the technology around how Bitcoin is generated off the blockchain, peer-to-peer, the value of Bitcoin being so high because of the power costs to generate. So the heating, the cooling, the ventilation, you can no longer just have, with the mass amount of Bitcoins required, you can no longer just run them off your own mining computers or server rooms. They need massive power generators. So they're actually heavily invested in technology around new power generators that are environmentally friendly. So they're looking into generating creating what do they call asymmetric magnetic power generators. So that almost reduces the cost to zero. Eventually. So these are in the making at the moment. And Bitcoin ATM machines. This is real. So they're deploying thousands of Bitcoin ATM machines all around the world, and in the future they will have their own tech coin as well. So this is a mining company as well as an investment company. I mean,
so I'm curious about that. When you say they're going to have their own tech coin, are they releasing their own USI Tech coin that they're going to?
There's only tokens available for these. Coins.
So we're going to see this up there with Bitcoin and Ethereum and things like that.
Yes. Oh, okay. And when I was in London, I don't know if you've ever been to Camden Market. It looks like a very colourful, very, very amazing version of our Vic Market. And down in the very bottom basement part of the Camden Market, there's this little embroidery shop. It looks like a little dungeon, and there was this Colombian dude with dreads who didn't speak English very well, but he's the little worker there doing the embroidery on caps and t-shirts, and at the counter facing the doorway was a Bitcoin ATM machine, and on top of the Bitcoin ATM machines, I don't know if everyone can see this, but it's Satoshi Point. This is another company which has its locations around London. It's telling you to grab a wallet and join the revolution. And this was in a little market. And
well, that's good to know. So they're investing money into the infrastructure behind this entire thing, and they have a face.
There.
So that is reassuring.
Absolutely. So you can go in to this Bitcoin machine, you have your Satoshi Point card, and cash out your own fiat currency.
Okay. So look, my mindset is that whereas based off of all of that, I'm inclined to think that they're definitely moving towards wanting to create something that's legitimate over here.
Yes.
I guess my only concern is that in regards to whether or not you may be doing this, with the right intentions, all that kind of stuff. Once again, the idea of having your money in an exchange, you're obviously opening yourself up to other hackers. And my whole thing in regards to Bitcoin is I'm wanting to take ownership over my own money, my own sovereignty, who I get to interact with, how I trade my money, all that kind of stuff. This is the fundamental idea behind Bitcoin. So if you're giving, where is it that, this is from Andres again, and he's like he is who I would call the Benjamin Franklin of the Bitcoin revolutionary, because he's such a polymath, and he understands the code. He's one of the core developers. He's a philosopher, he's an economist. He's good with people, this is why I believe that this thing hasn't been shut down like crazy in Australia and the United States, because if you have a look at how he conducted himself in the Senate hearings, he plays the game. He understands how to speak to these people, not within this libertarian cult-like mindset, but within a very practical sense of like cost risk analysis as to the pros and cons as to why this is a good thing. And his attitude is that look, yes, if you're going to need an exchange, fair enough, to get your money in and out, but ultimately you want to be taking control of your own money.
The value, and put it in a hard wallet.
Because realistically, and this isn't conspiratorial, this is actually very practical, outside of the hacker attacks and all that kind of stuff, because as you're aware, there have been instances where certain exchanges have been hit, and a lot of money's been lost. But as far as the government using its influence to, let's say, pressure certain organizations, rating these organizations to give up certain information, yes, they're now granted, from my understanding, they can't track the identities as such that easily. Like, they can't trace every. From my understanding, Bitcoin is kind of weakly pseudonymous. This is how Andres puts it. It's not absolutely. It's not completely anonymous. There are other big cryptocurrencies out there, like Monero or something like that. Monero, that is absolutely anonymous. But if these governing bodies are able to put pressure on these exchanges to divulge your information, or they can somehow gain access to your information, once again, you're putting your trust in the hands of people that are just people, and ultimately they have good wishes, but they may fall prey to the entire system. So ultimately, what I would urge people to do is, one, do as much research as they can.
Learn.
Yeah, and the reason why this is something that is still within the space of technology enthusiasts. I mean, a few years ago, only the people that are either technologists or software developers would be using this stuff, because it's so nerdy.
And gamers. Online gamers.
But it's becoming more and more accessible now through your iPhones, through and within a couple of years, we're already seeing Bitcoin ATMs emerge, and it's going to be like the internet. We're at the stage now of the internet, maybe during the mid 90s, where there's, people would have to put these weird addresses in and use these weird protocols, and it's like, how does this stuff happen? And now people can just swipe and transmit emails across, as opposed to doing these long pieces of code just to send things across. You know what I mean? Well,
absolutely. Like, there's a couple of things here I want to say. I want to share. Sure. One, I believe that the security of using cryptocurrencies is definitely going to be a lot higher than having your own money in your bank. These days, people can actually buy your credit card details off the dark web.
Yes, Leila.
And it's happening every day.
But the distinction is that it's I keep saying, same level. It's just as easy. However, the banks, what they will do a lot of the times, this hasn't happened to me before, but I work at a bank. I understand the process, right? Is that if you can legitimately prove that you have been subject to fraud, they will actually pay you out, and you're covered by insurance. However, that's arguably not cool, for the fact that they're actually devaluing the people's dollar by doing that, because they have the ability to regulate the money supply, as opposed to a system where, look, you lose all your shit, you don't now have the right to go to other people and say, hey man, you have to give me your money, right? Therefore, why should someone be able to counterfeit money just because it's been deemed by the general public, even though we haven't really agreed to that, just so that you can have your money back? I mean, you have an accident, and not everyone should be forced to pay for your accident, you know what I mean? And but what you're saying is absolutely true. Same level of security. However, because now it's your responsibility, and you don't have mommy and daddy to bail you out, you kind of have to take ownership of it yourself and start taking security seriously.
That's right. So security is definitely, you need to research the wallets that the exchanges where you're buying, and the wallets that you're actually using to secure your private keys. The second thing I wanted to mention was that, and this is something I learned yesterday in an amazing boot camp that was run by guys from linked.co, lincd.co. They're blockchain specialists. And we were learning about the, I guess, for the last 15 years or so, the way the internet has worked. It's been running applications. The majority of what we see today on the internet is an application, and underneath those applications are protocols, sets of rules.
Sure.
So there's like, let's say 20% of that could be the protocols and the rest is the application.
Sure.
With the blockchain revolution now, it's flipping that. So what we're seeing now is the majority of what these businesses want to move into are running off protocols, using and they'll piggyback off applications. So e-wallets are an example. They're protocols using an application to be able to transmit from one to another. So this is this is where we're moving. Where once upon a time the internet used to be just very basic
protocol. More layers keep on being built and make it easier for people to interact with the underlying protocol.
Exactly.
And before you know it, it's just a case of, I actually not believe this. I'm telling you, it's going to be a case of, computer, please transfer $54 into my mom's account and continue to transfer $10 every other 24 days.
Yes.
Done. Just like that. And this is actually how programming languages work as well. I mean, you start off with what's called machine code, which is ridiculous. Like the idea of creating some things in zeros and ones, believe it or not, and then you move into assembly, which is kind of like it's easier. You're actually using words, certain phrases to actually code, but still kind of long-ended. Now we have high-level programming language. We've had that for a few decades, okay? This is how it's relatively easy to understand, just like learning another language. You can construct the fabric of the internet through these protocols. This is how stuff like Bitcoin is created, through languages like Java, C, C++, Basic, all of that kind of stuff. All right. Now the next level, and it hasn't already been done. It's like most technology people think along the same lines. I'm sure, because I was speaking to another guy that was making reference to this as well, and I said I had the same thought, but we're going to have a level of language now that allows people just to speak ideas, like speak to a computer. Computer, I want you to set up a program that allows me to check how good I look, and to take care of whether or not I've phoned my mom, all that kind of stuff. Or it's going to be so sophisticated, and you're adding layers and layers, just like with what you're talking about, to what we're doing. And that's the beauty of it. It's reaching the point where it's going to be as easy as pie. Like you don't have to be some 14-year-old hip dude that understands all the technology, do this kind of stuff. But I'm confident we've reached the point where no kids being born from today are going to know what a bank is. The idea of going to a bank store and being able and needing some organization to transfer money from another person to another is ridiculous. Just like most kids, anyone at the age of 35, well, I'd say under the age of 20, finds it weird there was a time that there was no internet. You know what I mean? It's and we're reaching that in regards to Bitcoin. Like, I have no doubt that your children, if you have any, they're going to be what you used to use bank, used to give your money to other people to take care of. Well, what if they stole that money? It's like it seems so silly. Yeah, but
foreign.
Absolutely. But
it's like trying to show a kid these days the relationship between a pencil and a cassette player.
Yeah.
They don't get it.
There's actually this classic video of a kid looking at a cassette tape and trying to figure out what it is. Like it was basically
how do you play this?
Yeah, how do you play this thing? It's like
where do you plug the headphones in?
Totally. But one of the things I've noticed is that with technology, and you see this happening time and time again, it's like there's this hypnosis that people are under, where when it comes to change, like the idea of bracing something, it's like, no, we can't do it like that. This is so weird. Like this is the same thing that happened with apparently there've been these five iterations where money has changed from one form to another. Like, let's say we start off with cattle or perishable foods and things like that. You're transposing that. It's like, I'll give you my cattle if you give me this and that. All right, and then we move into let's say seashells or things that are a bit easier to transfer, more portable. Then we move into valuables like gold, silver, things like that. Gold standard, classic example. And then what happens is through the banks figure, people don't need to. We don't need to have all the money of the gold, all the people's gold in these banks. We can just give them IOUs, and that'll do. But in each iteration, people were very reluctant to change to the new technology. Like during the gold standard, I mean, people were saying, "What? You're going to give me this IOU?" And I'm going to be able to use this to get what no, I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? And you see this resistance taking place every iteration. And in the same way that people now are saying, that's not, I work in a bank, and besides, let's say, the younger technologically enthusiast people, or people are just open to change, unless I'm talking to them, the general idea is that, it's not real money, though, and you can't trust the internet.
Yeah, but neither is the interest on your credit card, and neither is, your
Exactly.
mortgage. That's not real money either.
Exactly. That's what you mentioned earlier. I mean, how much of the money that is in circulation is actually backed up by legitimate gold, that kind of stuff. There was a time when it was, and then at some point they realized, we don't need to have much of it here. We only need to have 1/10 of it. And now we're reaching the point where the many governments are trying to get rid of the idea of any kind of cash, for that matter. It's all going to be, through this magical fairy dust that isn't going under the same kind of rigorous protocols. Where if the government can just issue money and decide whether or not they're going to print more of it and decide who gets to have it and all that kind of stuff, it's not fair. I mean, people are subject to corruption, Yeah. But the beauty of Bitcoin is that it's basically, in philosophy, I like to think of it as natural law. It's this system where there's basically a rule as such, right? It's the code as to what, like the Founding Fathers spoke about this within the Declaration of Independence, that human beings are endowed with certain inalienable rights, and they're handed not from the power of the state, but from the hand of God, or from a secular approach. These ideas, this is how we get the concept of human rights. But there are certain guidelines in regards to how we're supposed to interact with each other, and no governing body, no authority has the right to circumvent these protocols, right? And when you look at this in code and how this has actually been constructed within the Bitcoin protocols and that kind of stuff, there are certain rules, mathematical equations that dictate how interaction is supposed to take place. The exchanges, what each thing is worth, or the coins, how many Bitcoins are released every 10 minutes. Certain rules that are not circumvented. They're the core code. You can't change these things. There are other layers where you can't make changes unless, of course, enough people unless of course there's consensus. So there's this socialistic element to it, but it's still within the confines of like liberty, freedom. And we're doing this in a way so that you can't, have a system where the government takes control and starts doing what they think is in the best interest. But what often happens is they start doing things for themselves, like they start taking all the money and spending it on themselves. And it's beautiful because when you learn about how this entire thing is constructed and how no one owns it, I personally feel more safe. And I've watched probably over 24 hours of Andreas now. The integrity of this man is unbelievable. And the intelligence behind him, and the people that actually code this kind of stuff, these are the people, in my opinion, that understand the philosophy, the logical thinking, the scientific approach of economics and all this kind of stuff. They're the people that should be making decisions on how the country is governed. But the thing is, they're not forcing their will upon anyone. They're saying, hey, I've invented a way of exchange that allows you to do X, Y, and Z. If you want to use it, fantastic. If you want to use a currency that fuels the military-industrialized complex that is devalued, that has lost 97% of its value since the dollar, in accordance to the gold standard, by all means, use that. Hey, I have something which I think is better, and more people are willing to accept that. And as opposed to saying, hey, take my money and give me your gold, otherwise I'm going to lock you up. Hey, I'm going to take all your money, and unless, of course, you're cool with that, I'm going to lock you up, and I'm going to use your money on things that you may not want. And that's the appeal that I think this whole cryptocurrency phenomenon has. And in regards to the investment opportunities like which you're discovering, which I'm discovering, it is an opportunity that obviously comes with risks. And I would advise people not to invest any money that they're not willing to lose. That's so important.
Because this first advice I was given too.
Absolutely. But having said that, it is, in my opinion, that it is going to be, without a doubt, the standard. And it's a good way to safeguard your money. If you live in a society particularly that does have a lot of volatility, and you want to ensure that these governments aren't going to stuff you up,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like this is like I was saying earlier, we're at the very, very, very early stages of this. It's like right now we can compare this to being part of the birth of the internet.
Absolutely.
When emails just started happening, when like let's compare the Bitcoin to an email where you were able to sell electronic send an electronic electronic mail to another computer, and people just couldn't fathom that. Like, what?
Totally.
How is that possible? We're at that stage right now with cryptocurrencies.
Totally.
It's that early stage.
So where do you see, I'm going to ask you to make a prediction here.
Yeah, sure.
What do you see happening with this? What do you think next year, how do you see this playing in the world of politics and the government, in people's lives next year by now?
12 months from
12
now.
months from now.
12 months from now. Okay, I would say 5 to 10% of the world's population at the moment that are educated and have money, they understand a little bit about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. I think that this time next year, maybe 30 to 40% of people will become educated about it.
Sure.
And maybe another, I'd say in total, maybe 60% of the population will become aware of it, but not still know about it, still think that it's funny money. I believe that the Bitcoin value will be, in 12 months from now, will be sitting around $80,000 to $100,000 at least. I'm being conservative. I mean, it was 10,500 yesterday, or the day before.
Yeah,
And,
it's at 2,000. It's 10,270 Australian dollars
Right
at the
now. moment.
Okay. And it's actually, that's been the stable figure. Like, it's very fluctuating. Like, I remember the time I saw your post a couple of weeks back. It just hit 10,000, something like that, maybe a little under.
10,059 on November the 4th.
Yeah.
That was an all-time high.
Yeah. But the thing is, it was fluctuating a lot. It went down again, then went up. You reach a point where it rarely goes under that. Like, it's a bit more. I think it's been around 10,000 for the last few days.
Yes.
So I think it's actually going to go up to 12,000, 11, maybe 12,000 by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, I'm inclined to think, just based off my understanding of the exponential growth of technology and how these things take place, I'm saying basically two options. If it does go crazy and hit the 100,000 mark, I am confident that it's going to create a lot of issues in the world in regards to politics, government.
Oh yeah, definitely. There will be some wars.
Absolutely, but I'm definitely inclined to think, unless of course there's a major occurrence by a government, some kind of world, I like something that really puts a dent into what's going on. I see this continuing to grow. They got to
swim with this. They need to swim with this tidal wave. They need to swim with it, not against it. That's the only way to really survive a tidal wave. This is like a tidal wave, and it's coming. It's building. So I believe so many new business models are going to adopt the blockchain technology.
No doubt.
And it'll set them apart from any other company that is not willing to take it on board. I watched this TED Talk where I forgot his name, but it's a guy that actually talks about what blockchain is. And at the end of the talk, he uses an example of I think it's a mandarin. Let's say for argument's sake, it's a mandarin. And he says let's say I want to find out if this mandarin is actually organic, and there's one set of mandarins over here that has a sticker on it that says it's organic, but then there's another set of mandarins over here which have got a QR code on it, which actually run off blockchain technology, that when you scan that code, it gives you a complete mapped summary of where that mandarin came from. Now, which one are you going to choose? If that's saying it's giving you a map of how it was farmed and it is an organic piece of fruit, I'm going to choose this one over this one.
Exactly.
Because there's truth and transparency. The question is, though, what if you swap the stickers? I mean, it comes down to ethics. What if people, want to be able to put this RFID or
well, that's always going to be a factor. I mean, they're going to be people that can ruin it. But because of that, shouldn't, at least from my whole attitude, is just because of the potential for that, shouldn't take away people's ability to use amazing technologies like that. Like the idea of saying someone can't use the internet or use this technology to save their life savings, I think is criminal. Yes. Just because someone passes a law and says, oh, we don't like you being able to have voluntary exchange between someone because in the future this might have an X and Y effect. That's when things get crazy.
Absolutely. So look, I think that this is creating new business models. Entrepreneurs will now have an opportunity to get really, really creative. There's so many industries that can benefit from this. It's not just the financial world. It's a technology. It's artificial intelligence at its best. Nothing's going to stop it. I think we need to jump on board with ideas to to work with this revolution.
Could not agree more. And I know you've been taking on the role of helping so many people become familiar with this technology.
Yes.
I see your posts every other day on feel like you're not so much proselytizing this, but letting people open their minds up to their understanding of this. Because to me, it's all about people understanding what is going on, and then they can make informed decisions.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to put your links here. If people want to check out your Facebook, your Twitter, that's kind of stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, get in touch with this girl. She's more than happy to help you to edify your noggins on the world of whether it's Zumba dancing, whether it's fitness, or whether it's finance.
Sure,
you come from a technology background, like telecommunications.
IT, telco, mostly telecommunications. So I have a consulting business with Telstra. So for those that are outside of Australia, Telstra is the number one carrier in the country. And I really, really love what I do, because I service customers, business customers, with a gap of customer service, and keep the carrier honest. So I'm the middle person between the carrier and the business. So I like being that person. I like being the person that transmits information. I like connecting people with the right knowledge. And so I've got a lot of time on my hands to be able to spend my time, invest my time, I should say, in learning. So there's so much, because we are at the beginning of this blockchain and cryptocurrency revolution. I'm now spending so much time learning everything I can, so that I can then translate this into simple terms for those that don't know.
Absolutely.
Don't understand.
I'm doing the same thing. Like, I'm probably going to look back on this 6 months from now and go, oh my God, I didn't know what I was talking about. You know what I mean? And I did that just 2 weeks ago. And I thought I understand. And then you learn and the thing is, it was refreshing to find out that Andreas, who knows more about this than anyone I've ever come across, because there's so many different layers of it, and he did the same thing. Like, he was talking about how he was obsessed with, basically he lost so many amount of like kilograms, because when he first found out about this, he was like, whoa, this cannot be true. It was the same experience he had with the internet, and he just became obsessed learning about it. And I've been doing the same thing, because once you realize the applications of this thing, you start to second guess yourself. And this is what I was doing from day one. Like, this is pretty amazing, but nah, people wouldn't allow this to take off.
It's happening.
No, and then you start. But once you actually realize, oh wait a sec, it's going on. Oh wait a sec, this is actually happening.
Real.
Purely from and I always think along the line. My mind works. I'm very imaginative. Like I see potentiality in everything. Like, a lot of people tend to be more restrictive and go, this would never happen. But I tend to try to be skeptical. Like, the potential, I open my mind up, because I have an imagination, to what is possible. And as far as what is possible within the realm of cryptocurrency, without a doubt, just like the internet opened doors that people couldn't imagine, this, just along the lines of exponentiality, this is like the internet, to the nth degree. Like, it is the internet of money, as Andreas refers to it. Like, there's this distinction where it's basically going to it's going to fuel the internet.
Yeah, absolutely.
On so many levels. And
absolutely.
I'm very excited, if you can't tell already.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sharing that with you. It's because we understand the technology, and we're at the beginning stage of learning more and more about it. So, like yourself, only a couple of weeks ago, I didn't know what I know now, and even now, in a few more weeks, this will be basic information of what I'm going to know in a few more weeks.
Likewise.
Only because I'm, really throwing myself into environments where there are specialists around me that are teaching me, and there are all these boot camps. They're not fitness boot camps, they're actual cryptocurrency boot camps and workshops that I'm attending, because I really want to become an expert in this area.
Absolutely.
And there are so many others way above me that are far more knowledgeable, but they've been in the game for many years, and I've only just started. We've touched on this much of the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly.
And there's so much more to know. I reckon we should be doing more of these let's call them crypto geek podcast.
I'm down for it. We could even do the Skype thing, because I'd love to do that. But I just want to also say that, look, I'm very much open to people interacting with me and letting me know what's up. If I'm saying something that you think is off, please inform me, because whereas I'm definitely open to having these conversations. I don't want this to be one way, even though I tend to talk a lot. It's just But I want to learn as much as I can. So if Leila or myself are saying things that you're like, oh, I don't know what these guys don't know what they're talking about, or you don't trust the validity of the stuff that we're promoting here, be sure to let us know.
Yeah.
I think it's the most important thing, though, is just this is the beauty of the internet. It allows people to be able to make informed decisions, to actually have the choice. I mean, when you compare the internet to TV, a friend of mine put a beautiful meme on this. The TV has what, like 5, 6, 7 channels, maybe if you're on cable, like 100. The internet has all of these possibilities, and a lot of people would advocate that, you know, you don't need that many choice. You're just going to get what do they call it now, fake news. But it's important to give people the opportunity to make their own decisions, and
creating awareness, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And once people have that awareness, you know, where you go from there is your own choice. If you think this is a bad idea, and you know you end up not being able to make millions of dollars in the future, by all means, that's your choice. Hey, I may end up losing lots of money, but I still want to have the ability to make that decision for myself. And I want people to provide me with information, alternative viewpoints, because that's the only way in which you grow through. This is the other thing I want to mention in regards to the adversarial system of conversation, of like learning. This is how the legal system works.
Yeah.
This is actually how Bitcoin works. The other aspect of it is that it's working on this system of game theory within an adversarial sense, where all these different factions want what they want. Like, they may want certain things. The miners may want certain things. You know, they may want larger block sizes for various reasons and so forth. All right. I'm speaking about specific terminology here, but the people in the know what I'm talking about. But the point is that there is this adversarial conversation that's going on between parties based off of the things that they do, that allows them to arrive at what actually happens. And the way in which you have this system working is through people having diverse opinions and having different objectives and having this adversarial thing going on. Because the whole idea of the free market and of this trust software program that we call Bitcoin, right? The way that it is actually able to grow is by having people come up with different ideas, different versions of Bitcoin, like Ethereum. This is what the free market is supposed to bring, because it's kind of like Darwinian evolution. The whole idea is that the more options that you get, the more people are going to go up in the separate ways. Like, we have Bitcoin Cash now. We're going to find out which is actually better. A lot of people are disappointed about that. They have reasons, but the whole idea is that we eventually get things that compete, and we get the best thing. And if someone has a better argument to make in regards to why Bitcoin's not going to be the future, or why X and Y may be a bad idea, I want to learn about it. And in order to grow, I think you need to be open to learning and different perspectives.
Absolutely. I'm loving this journey. So there'll be, while we're talking and there are viewers listening to this as we speak, just keep in mind that we are the 1%ers. There are so many people. You just walk out into public and just ask them what Bitcoin is, they'll be like, what? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
What's the blockchain? I have no idea what you're talking about. They don't know.
That's why I love people like you, Leila, dropping this knowledge, trying to educate people about what's going on in the world, because that's what I'm all about. My little call sign on the interwebs is Esoteric Noetic, which is all about dropping stuff that is not within the open circles of the masses, like speaking about things that are on the fringe and trying to get people to open their minds up to things that they may not have considered. And I think you're someone that's very open towards new opportunities. I see you embracing these adventures all the time, with open arms, and I think we need more of that in society. I think one of the greatest risks is not taking any risk at all, particularly when it comes to information.
I mean, even a risk can be a good risk if it's an educated and well calculated one. So, sometimes I did a blog about this a while ago when I was talking about the difference between risk and chance. So I'm taking my chances on this as well as a well-calculated risk based on knowledge of technology, but knowledge of people that are experts in the industry, whether it's technology, whether it's finance. So when you put everything together, it all just makes sense, and you have a better vision of the future. It all just makes sense. This is the way we're headed, and as you were saying before, yes, there's going to be volatility on the climb, but it's on the up and not on the down.
Absolutely.
So I want to be on that ride.
Damn straight. Leila, I cannot thank you enough for taking your time out to drop the knowledge. It's been really educational hearing your journey. And getting to talk about this stuff, because I feel there's so many few people that are open to wanting to have this conversation. It's usually, it's never going to work. Yeah, you're crazy, man.
They don't know.
Oh yeah, the people in the finance sector. I work part time in a bank, and they think it's this big bubble. It's not sustainable. They don't understand the technology behind it, and I want to know about all of the crazy stuff because it's usually the craziest stuff that most people were against that ends up being the most revolutionary stuff. Whether it was the Wright brothers speaking about flight. The Smithsonian Institute, the scientific institute at the time, said that it was impossible for heavier than air flight, and even 5 years after. The Wright brothers were able to fly, they would not change their paper on this. Pretty much most of the major discoveries, Nikola Tesla, his whole ideas, like during the late 1800s, he made a remote control boat, and people just thought that must have been fake. You know what I mean? And it takes a long time. And most of these ideas, like the internet, like most of the things that have happened, like the idea of landing people on the moon, it's considered to be crazy. And a lot of the times they are, but it's always the most crazy stuff that ends up being the most revolutionary stuff.
Yep.
And I like being on the side of the dreamers,
Absolutely. I get people asking me all the time whenever I post up any sort of cryptic kind of awareness message on Facebook. They hit me up in private, like, I want to learn, I want to make money with Bitcoin. Show me. I'm like, no, slow down. Let's find out how much you know about Bitcoin first. Take a step back. Learn about the technology. So people need to understand that this is a learning journey. This is an educational process. And then once you learn everything you need to learn about it, you will make your own decision
Absolutely.
on how to put your money in to certain places to, I guess, make this your own little farm. But I discovered yesterday how once the mathematical problem is solved between the peer-to-peer system on the blockchain, it spits out a reward for that miner.
Yes.
So
that's the proof of work there. That's actually why it has a gold standard. It
is.
Yeah.
And we had this amazing website called earn.com, EARN.com, where it was showing how just if you respond to messages on that platform, but it's a little bit like a LinkedIn platform. You put up a profile of yourself, and when as you agree to use this platform, you earn small amounts of Bitcoin. And as you keep verifying details and posting replies and responses to others on that same platform, you're earning Bitcoin. It's clever.
Yeah, there are a lot of systems like that. Money. Yeah, there are a lot of systems that are being created. A lot of based off of that kind of platform,
it's
I've
a
heard
reward system.
Absolutely. Like apparently, Andres has been speaking about how they're going to start applying streaming of money, just like you'd stream video.
Yes.
Because most of us get paid once a fortnight, that kind of stuff, because of how the banks work. It's too much transactional fees if they're going to be doing this on the regular. But because of the way in which this technology works, you can now be getting paid every second.
Yeah.
So basically, your bank account is being filled with money every second, and it allows you also to do things like watching things where you're getting charged on the second, or like what you're talking about, like you get paid for likes or how much you interact with things.
That's exactly what it is.
It changes the entire medium of money.
Completely.
And that's the thing that I find fascinating, because it's revolutionizing the way in which we do things.
And it's actually creating more community.
And more more opportunities. I mean, people think, oh no, what about these banks? Well, here's the thing: the whole philosophy behind the free market is, if something does not actually serve a good, like a purpose, it won't exist. If these banks can't lift their game and find a way of adopting this new technology, which is what they did with the internet. I mean, essentially, they found the telephone companies, became ISPs, internet service providers. And if these banks can't find another way of providing, like an exchange or something like that, even though I would not advocate for people, using a middleman, because you're taking a risk. But if they can't find another alternative, another way of rewarding the market, then they shouldn't be around. Otherwise, we just have this system where the government's paying these banks to do things that they can't do as well. Yeah. And we're paying for it with our tax dollars.
Yeah, well, that's why you'll see now they're heavily advertising.
Bitcoin is crap,
Well, not just that, but banks are advertising zero fees to be able to use another bank ATM system. And then also on the radio, I heard BPay. They're putting out this reward system that if you use BPay, that you're thrown into some sort of syndicate to win money or of some sort. So That is all happening right now because they're completely aware that people are actually pulling out their money and putting it into cryptocurrency exchanges, and they're making money outside of their rule. You can also start to pay for your bills using BitPay, not BPay, but BitPay. So that's using your Bitcoin. Get on it. Just be aware. Just know.
Absolutely.
When they're trying to sell you something, if it's an institution that is centralized that's trying to sell you something, understand the underlying reasons why. So yeah.
Well said. Well said.
No worries.
Well, Leila, I think we've done almost 3 hours on this thing.
Have we?
2.5. It's been. I rarely do podcasts anymore, but I'm so glad to get you here because I think we've covered some really important stuff. I think. It's definitely shone some light on some of the disillusions people have in regards to this.
To be continued.
And absolutely, to be continued. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to put up Leila, the wonderful, beautiful, extraordinary entrepreneur. I like to call her the entrepreneur because she's got all these things going on. I'm going to put her links down so you can check her out. If you want to hit her up and find out more about what's going on, feel free to do so. You can hit me up. I'll probably get into some long rant about how the government is trying to fuck everyone up, you know. Hit me. If you want the real kind of like hardcore investment logical stuff, hit Leila up. If you want to talk about conspiracy theories, hit me up.
Hey, I'll be on that too.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, it's been awesome. Hope you enjoy this. Be sure to give us a shout out. Tell your mom about this Bitcoin. And send us a message. Yeah, get some Bitcoin. That's the last thing I want to say is if you want to promote this thing, if you already have some Bitcoin, one of the best things that you can do is just get someone to download an app. It takes a few minutes, and just to send them a bit of Bitcoin. Not an actual whole Bitcoin, just a fraction. I mean, that's people don't realize this. You can send someone 4 cents as Bitcoin, and then they'll see that money grow. This is what happened to me. A few months later, I'm like, oh shit, I just made like quite a. I just quadrupled my money.
Yeah.
What? I can get more money and I can make money from this?
Yeah.
What? What people are making money from doing this shit? Oh my god.
It's real.
So best thing to do is to find people already doing it. Yeah. Get them to help you out. And look, at the end of the day, to me, this is what Andreas said, and I definitely resonate with this. It's about educating yourself first and foremost. Exactly. It's not a get rich scheme, even though wink wink. But there are yes,
well, not a get rich quick.
Yeah,
scheme.
definitely. But if you're thinking about longevity, if you're thinking about trying to move in with the times, because people that don't get swept up with the technology often get left behind. Most businesses, organizations, they have to adapt with the technologies in order to benefit from these technologies. And as individuals, I think it's incumbent upon us to do that. So rather than playing this, I don't trust this thing, educate yourself, because I assure you, there are many risks involved in this. As we spoke about, there are hackers all around the world. They're going to try to get access to your stuff. So please educate yourself and make your own decision based off of those, based off that knowledge. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, until next time. Peace out, keep it real, don't drive in text, and get some Bitcoin, yo. Ow! Peace. All right. Thank you so much. Life's purpose is to feel joy. Metaphysical, lyrical, setting up the truth. The only one to make changes, walking in your shoes. Be the example, don't complain about the news. Making music and serving the world with the loot. Now you can be the same, or you can be the change. Find strength from inside, break through the chains. No one to blame, nothing to prove. You create your reality, it's up to you.